these to YouTube so that everyone can start seeing them, and there'll be a nice collection online. But today is July 21st, and it is our July Illinois Region Feeding Team meeting. Before we get to that, I'll just do a quick introduction of myself and the other regional team lead on this. So my name is Ari Denson. I'm the Mass Care and Logistics Disaster Program Manager. I work with Jamie Winterbaum and Hank Welch on our feeding program. I work with Steve Wise and Cindy Altman on the sheltering team, and also work with Sue Keel and Ron Leffler on logistics for the Illinois region. I'll pass it to you, Jamie.
Well, already introduced me. I recognize several names on here, and I want to thank everyone for joining tonight. Can we pass it on to, let's see here, Anthony? Just let us know who you are and where you come from.
Hello, my name is Anthony. I'm part of part of the Red Cross here for a couple months now, and come from the I'm part of I was originally from New York, but I've been out here for 21 years. Part of the Region 4 DST team.
Awesome, welcome.
Yep.
Bill?
Hello, my name is Bill Brady. I live in Frankfort. I should say the New Lenox, Illinois. I'm right now on the feeding team and doing sheltering.
Awesome. Thanks for being here. Doug?
I am Doug Deckard. Part of feeding, sheltering, whatever, disaster. If it needs to be done, we'll figure out a way to get it done. So, fun job is just making sure that Jamie doesn't get too whacked out when I come into her presence and drive her nuts.
A jack of all trades.
Yes, master of none.
Diana? We'll move on. Jan?
My name is Jan Thornton, and I'm a DAT trainee. I've been on since about mid-June in Response Area 1. I live in the Rockford area.
Awesome. Thanks for joining us today. Dean, if you'd like to introduce yourself, just briefly, what brought you into maybe feeding and how long and where you're at. My
name's Dean Otta. I'm from Decatur area.
Awesome.
Just got on. I'm not sure if anybody can hear me or not.
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Yeah, I've been a volunteer for 10 years, so I'm just listening in and see what's going on in mass care.
Awesome. Thanks for joining. Ted?
Hi, good evening. My name is Ted Robinson. I've been with Red Cross for 5 years. I'm a DAT responder. Just listening every week, every year, every month to see what's going on.
Awesome. Thanks for joining. And then last, Mary, who's on the phone.
Hi, Mary Branicki, DAT responder, disaster spiritual care, feeding, mass care, and logistics.
Awesome. Thanks so much, everyone, for joining us. So first thing that we're going to cover is a quick update from the COVID compendium. So the COVID compendium was recently updated. It pretty much increased the amount of activities that we can do without a mask. So pretty much we can do all activities right now if you're vaccinated, emphasis if you're vaccinated, which is on the honor system, without the mask, all mask care activities. The exception to that would be if we're in a congregate shelter or if a client asks us to wear one. So aside from that, we can do all other activities without a mask if, again, you're vaccinated. The other key to that is there's another asterisk to that, is it depends on the level of infection that is occurring within the community that that you're serving in. And I'll show you what I mean. So this is being determined using covidactnow.org. So if it's green through yellow, I believe, green through orange, then we can work without a mask in mask care activities, with the exception, again, if a client asks us to wear a mask or if we're in a congregate shelter. That's being determined based off of this map. And in fact, you can get more granular. So you can look within counties themselves and see. So you can see right here the level of spread that there is. So like you can see that Peoria County is doing amazingly, and there's some southern counties as well, some in the north that are worse off, that are having a bit more trouble. So if we were to have mass care activities there, like opening up the shelter, we would use this map to determine how we would proceed in terms of mask wearing and the strictness of those COVID-19 procedures. But it's another thing in which we're both opening up, but as I think Doug alluded to, you know, the risk is fluctuating a little bit with new variants. So the system is built to react accordingly. If things are going well, we can have looser restrictions. If they become worse, such as red or burgundy, then burgundy being the highest level of risk of severity here, then we will pretty much go back to our previous procedures of COVID precautions back in 2020. Does anyone have any questions about that or concerns about that?
Please don't be quiet. Your questions are welcome here.
Yeah, it's a small group, so please shout over me. I invite it. I encourage all of you, you know, if you want, go in, read the, you know, look at different portions of the compendium, especially if it relates to your response. Or if you have further questions before, let's say you deploy a response, please don't hesitate to ask myself, to ask Jamie if we're feeding, to ask Steve Wise if you're sheltering. Ask questions, you know, before, during, and after. You know, there's a lot of complexity to the rules. That's why we want to sort of make you aware. But if you have any questions after this, please don't hesitate to ask. And you can get the COVID-19 compendium. So this is the entire collection of all the different rules and how we're going to operate on the exchange. Next, we're going to go over feeding partner experiences. And we had really two great interactions. And I'll hand it to Jamie to talk about her experience working with a partner on one of the recent responses. Then I'll cover one of Hank Welch's most recent experiences with another partner.
Well, we just, here in the last, week and a half, we went to Perry, Missouri, and that is a very rural area. That's one of the 4 counties of the Illinois region, Rawls County. And when I got there, I was not aware of the Southern Baptists were there. And I thought, wow, if the Southern Baptists are here, that must mean we're pumping out a lot of meals because they normally will not do under 500 meals a day. Little and behold, I'm looking at about 175 to 250. So, I mean, a little higher still, but they are willing in the northeast section of Missouri, they are willing to partner with the American Red Cross and cook the food so the clients have meals. And it's a lot easier than working with the caterer because the Southern Baptists, as many of you may know, they come with the full kitchen and a staff, and they are up to food standards. And they partner really well with the Red Cross. And we were able to actually get meal costs down to $2 a person when we were pricing it all out. Normally we go about $7 per meal, so per person. And they are willing to work with us in the future. Anytime that we go out in an operation, a larger one, you're going to see the full kitchen. And you go out as a herb driver, you're going to see that full kitchen. It is a wonderful experience. And the Southern Baptists don't just cook food. They brought in chainsaws, generators. They went out and were cleaning up yards, cutting down trees, patching or putting tarps over roofs. If we set up a mark, they'll actually babysit. There's a lot of different things that they actually do. So it was really nice to work with them on a smaller scale. And we definitely look forward to working with them in the future. Passing it on to you, Ari.
Awesome. Thanks, Jamie. And so the other partner that we worked with, and more specifically Hank Welch really worked with, and he is currently away on vacation in Wisconsin, was for the Morris Fire, really specifically, and also to a smaller extent in Rockton. And these were both for industrial fires, coincidentally, that were, I think, 2 weeks apart. Because I guess, Illinois, if they're setting one factory on fire, they decide that they need to set another one on fire while they're at it. And the one that really sort of helped build a great relationship, strengthened our relationship and knowledge with a partner, similar to our experience in Perry, Missouri, was the Morris one. It was to a lithium-ion battery fire, about 180,000 tons.
All right.
Yes, Anthony?
The funny thing is that Morrison fire, believe it or not, I was listening to that on my cell phone, on my scanner app.
Mm-hmm.
And something like 180,000 pounds of lithium batteries got exploded, if I'm not quoting it right.
Yeah, I believe it's something like that. It was a lot.
That's not good. I guess the price of the batteries are gonna go up.
Well, yeah. I'm not sure why they were recycling old batteries, but from what I understand, they weren't.
I'm just glad nobody got hurt from that. That's the plus.
For sure.
Oof.
For sure. And so with that response, initially we did some canteening for firefighters and meals at the shelter that night. But very quickly we got in contact with the local Salvation Army lead. And right from the get-go after that, they pretty much, we split duties where they were doing feeding for canteening for the first responders and providing meals for the sheltering. And we were providing more of maybe some logistical support. So helping identify where we could procure meals, on some occasions helping deliver some later on. But really we were splitting those duties and it worked exceedingly well. They were familiar with the community, with the businesses there, and it kept us from being overwhelmed with any one task. And as you might imagine, we had just come off 2 other large responses since then. So the area of volunteers was a bit worn out. So it was sort of one of those times where we complemented each other really well, which is always nice to see when you're able to complement each other early on and avoid sort of stepping on each other's toes and making sure that we're not duplicating services. And one of the other great things that we got that, other than learning to work with them on not duplicating services, ensuring that we can focus on one activity at a time, is that, again, similar to Perry, Missouri, we strengthen that relationship. And what's more important than Jamie or Hank having an individual great relationship with that person is when Red Cross interacts with Salvation Army or Southern Baptist Church within those communities, they won't necessarily remember Jamie or Hank or anyone else from the Red Cross, but they will remember how well the Red Cross worked with them. And, it might not be Jamie next time, but the next person that goes in there to do feeding will be well served by the relationship that she and Hank were able to establish with them. And that's just as important as anything else. So those were two great experiences, and is a great example of, again, working with an organization not to duplicate services, but instead accentuate how we could work well together and improve those. Before we go into the next slide, I'll open up to questions and any other items that Jamie, you'd like to hit on in terms of that.
Well, when you say feeding partners, you're not only looking at the Salvation Army or Southern Baptist, but locally we have different partners. Like in Moline, we have Hy-Vee, and we also have Hungry Hobo. And throughout Response Area 5, we have a good partnership with Nelson's Catering. So it doesn't have to be those organizations. It could be, a caterer or a smaller business. But having those relationships when the time comes that you already have those established, so you say, hey, I need help, and they deliver. That's very important for us to deliver the mission.
Yeah, perfect. And I think Jamie has a wonderful question that's specific to the Moline area, in terms of helping build up sort of Red Cross there. And yeah, I agree with, I second everything that Jamie says, and definitely keeping in mind that any organization can be a partner. Some of them might have more pre-established relationships, but in these instances, I think Hank and Jamie really exemplified how you can come in to a situation in which you don't necessarily have the strongest of pre-established relationships, but use that as a launching off point to strengthen it and prepare ourselves so that next time we go into Perry or Morris, we have that there and we'll be able to hit the ground running ahead of time. We know who we're working with and we'll be able to establish these action items together much sooner. All right, I'm going to go into the next slide unless there's any other questions. The next thing I want to talk about is sustainability. So one of National's big objectives is taking into account climate change and our impact on the environment. So part of that is looking at, the entire enterprise, everything from the vehicles that we use to, in this case, what we use for feeding. And what we typically use are often styrofoam products, clamshells, cups, forks, and knives. What they'll be doing going forward is starting to pilot new items. And I think a lot of us have, especially depending on the community, we've used some of these products, whether they're biodegradable forks and knives that may have like compressed cardboard, or I'm not a big fan of these, but like paper straws or metallic straws or all these other products that are supposed to be more environmentally friendly. They'll be testing out a couple of different versions of these. As a region, we don't have to do anything to prepare for this. So we're not looking to replace our current cachet of items with these new products at the time being. What you should be anticipating is, and this please, I encourage you all to keep an eye out if you're going out in any sort of capacity, but especially if you're in feeding. They will be sending these to DROs, disaster response operations, as the new items to be used. As well, what you'll notice throughout the DRO are different flyers with a QR code. So it'll bring you to a survey, and they're encouraging anyone on the operation to fill out that survey after using it. Give National your opinion on, did the products work? If they were like paper straws, like did they melt really quickly? Were they not as usable? Did they work well? Maybe they didn't fall apart. Give them an idea of how well it worked. If there's any issues, again, they're trying to find the best new products that are far more sustainable than styrofoam. The only caveat to this is that in certain communities, you might see this in like California, the Bay Area, maybe some other metropolitan areas, in which they have an actual ban on using styrofoam products. The Red Cross has worked on establishing and getting waivers within those communities. Often the communities, when they made the mandates, already have waivers for emergency response or disaster response, but in the event that they don't, we'll look to get a waiver if we can't get these products out there. Because the number one thing, other than sustainability, is, in this case, providing for our clients while we're working towards a more sustainable product. So with that said, we won't be dropping client support or service delivery for this, but it will be something that we'll be working towards and that you'll see out there on operations. Any questions on that? Next, ERV, emergency response vehicles, as well as MERV, the ProMasters. You've seen this slide before. You've seen this slide before if you've been on previous feeding meetings. So I made an adjustment from update training coming out in July to update data training coming out in August, hopefully. There's been some delays. They're finishing up doing the final filming, and that should have been done actually this week. The big thing is getting the final approval from national headquarters and then actually posting them. So there'll be a couple of trainings. 2 of them will be, 3 of them, I believe, actually, will be web-based trainings. And then there'll be the new in-person orientation. So it'll be similar to what we did before, but the orientation will set you up to be able to drive a MERV, mission-oriented or mission-specific response vehicle. They're the ProMasters, similar sort of vehicle as the emergency response vehicle, the next gen, except instead of being on a Mercedes chassis, it's on a Dodge chassis. And they're a bit more utilitarian. They're actually vehicles that are coming from blood services. And so they're being transferred from blood services to disaster services, which also means that when we receive them, they'll probably have a bit more mileage, possibly a few more dings than when we receive the next geners, because if any of you have ever experienced or have volunteered with blood services, know they put an exceedingly large number of miles on their vehicles, driving all over the place. But they'll be nice vehicles. We'll be getting 6 of them. We haven't received them yet within the region, but they'll be a nice addition to our emergency response vehicles throughout. With that said, the other thing I want to point you to is when we come out with trainings, myself and Guy will be helping lead that, along with Sue Keel and a number of others. A lot of you know that Ron Leffler is still is the emergency response vehicle lead for our region, but is temporarily out due to sickness. We are preparing for him to come back, but for the time being, I'll be filling in as best as I can. So for those of you who are working with Ron, used to working with Ron, have a bit more patience as I sort of work things out, but we'll be looking to get that training done as soon as it's available, with Linda Bissett or someone else from National coming in to help get all of the other IRV trainers trained up so that we can go back out into the region and do classes. The last thing before I hand it off to Jamie is the semi-annual inspections. If any of you participate in that, semi-annual inspections, so 6395, it's a walkthrough of all our emergency response vehicles. That is due by the end of July. So they all have to be done by August 1st. And that is it for emergency response vehicles at the moment. I'll hand it to Jamie on some new items that the feeding team acquired.
Well, we were approved to purchase 6-foot foldable tables and rollable totes to put in for our region and our region alone. When these IRVs deploy, those tables and those totes will have to be pulled. Because as we know, anyone who's ever deployed, not all items come back except for your standard items. But those tables will be wonderful when it comes to canteening. I took the Quincy tables down with us to Perry, and we used those to hand out snacks and water and the cleanup supplies, which that's what we have to use for smaller items when we did a smaller operation there in Perry. We just had trash bags and tarps and gloves. And that worked out really well to have those tables sitting outside the vehicle to show the client what we have to offer. Also, sometimes it's not the easiest to be feeding and or handing out snacks and water for canteening. So those tables make it a lot easier to set up where you need to, and you can have a larger team. And when we need to socially distance, those tables come in real handy. But those tables are belonging to the feeding team, not for logistics or this, that, and the other. Those belong to the IRV. And those totes will be stuff that we can put in for our regional loan. Items that make it easier to pull when they do deploy. So you say, hey, I don't want these snacks or whatever items that you put in for your canteening, you can put those in those totes. And when it's time for that IRV to be deployed, you pull them off quickly. Any questions on these new tables or comments? You guys are getting a little quiet. Did we put you guys to sleep, or are you guys still listening?
I'm listening.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Typing away, but I'm listening.
Cool. So next, we'll go on to the door. How many of you have any of you heard of the door, or are you not familiar with the door when I say that?
I have no idea.
I am not familiar with it.
Okay.
I never heard of it.
Awesome. As some of you who might not, some of you are not familiar with it, I'm sure you could probably guess the DOOR is an acronym. What it stands for, I'm not 100% sure on. I know the D stands for disaster. Outside of that, it is one of those ones that people keep telling me what it is, and then it goes in one side of my head and out the other. But it is essentially, it is how we deploy people. So that is where we post what is needed for jobs, so positions, gaps that are required, and where we assign people to actually get deployed. So I'm going to show you to give you an idea of what it looks like. There we go. So this is the door. And I will go to fulfill staffing request. And it looks like there's nothing on here at the moment. Earlier today, they had a couple of positions. One was a information planning damage assessment manager, as well as 4 recovery SA workers. Essentially here, you'll see all the different positions. You'll see the proximity. So proximity is going to say when they're opening it up, they're always going to be looking for the closest people possible. So if you have someone that's 100 miles away, they'd rather deploy that person to the disaster response rather than someone who, you know, is on the other side of the country. And so proximity is going to state, are they looking for people within 500 miles? Are they looking for people within the division? Are they looking for people within the continental US? Or is it open up to people from Hawaii, Puerto Rico, Alaska, everywhere else? So it'll give you a little idea of what it's looking for. It'll also state what sort of gap, group activity position they're looking for. If there's any specific qualifications. So as you know, their sheltering recently had some updates in which not only are there gaps, but there's also specialty tracks. So it might say they're looking for a shelter manager who has a headquarters or district coordinator specialty gap. So it's saying that not only do they have a gap, but they're specifically trained for a special activity within that. And then finally, you'll see any particular notes as well as hardship codes. So hardship codes are specific to, are there any, I'm gonna mute you on 630. So they're gonna say if there's any specific, so it might be air quality if you're going out to wildfires, it might be extreme heat if you're going out to an island deployments or somewhere down in the southeast. Especially there might be one, you know, for food if there's limited options there. Because sometimes if you go to some of these remote locations, even in the Keys, they had extreme hardships there because it was just difficult. There wasn't any electricity. You were staying in a tent often, and just your options there, you know, were a bit more limited. And just to keep these in mind, you'll be told if there are any, and which factor into whether or not that will be the deployment that you want to go on or wait for another one. The reason I wanted to show you this, though, is specifically sort of give you an idea of what the workforce engagement team is looking at. So as we're going into disaster season, they're constantly watching this for positions that are opening up throughout disaster season. So we've had some come up. They're paying attention to it. What I'd like you to do is, if you're interested in deploying, is one, think about what you want to go out and do. So you're on the feeding meeting. I'm hoping that you're thinking about going out in feeding. I know Jamie is hoping for that because we want you to come back and help work or run our feeding operations here for local disaster responses. I know Jamie and Hank would love someone to work alongside them in that capacity. And so we really want you to sort of be prepared for that. So the first one is making sure you've done all the trainings. And we'll give you the list of trainings that are required at the end of this. I'll read them off for those on the phone so you can specifically hear what they are. And the other one is making sure your profile is showing that you're available. So I'll show you quickly how to do that. So when you go into Volunteer Connection, it should look somewhat similar to this. And what you'll do is you'll want to go to My Profile. So you log into Volunteer Connection, you go to My Profile. You'll wait for it to load. And then you'll see these tabs on the left side. You'll click on Disaster Cycle Services. And when you go to Disaster Cycle Services, you'll see something that says Disaster Responder Availability. And so right now I filled in mine. So like from July 27th through September 21st for the next 2 months, I'm not available to deploy in person, but I'm able to respond virtually. After that, I'm able to deploy nationally. So you're able to give those specifications, or you can say, you know, from, you know, for the next 2 weeks, I'm able to deploy. So you put that in, and then you put in another section of time that says I'm able to deploy in starting on December 1st. So you can give those specific date ranges, because when they're opening up the door again, when they're looking at them, and then they're clicking on a specific gap to get filled, it will show them people who have the gap. So if they have a bunch of feeding positions, they'll look at who is a feeding service associate, who has marked themselves available, and who is, you know, do they have all the trainings in the availability set. So to adjust that, once you go down here, you'll click on edit. And you'll just add in that time frame. So like here again, I could put in, you know, from the next time after that will be from May 18th to August 17th. Maybe there's a 5-month block in which I'm not available. So you can do that. So you can break it up. And you can set this as far as you want, but you can only do it in 3-month increments. Does anyone have any questions about this? I can go back through it again if you need me to. For the people who weren't familiar with the door, who haven't deployed before, does that make sense? Do you have any questions about sort of how to set your availability and what the workforce engagement team is looking at when they're paying attention for opportunities?
Is anyone interested in deploying this hurricane season?
Or wildfires? Dealer's choice.
True. Looks like we got a bunch of regional and local volunteers then. No one's wanting to deploy?
Ted, are you interested in deploying?
Yeah, Ted Robinson, I'm interested in deploying.
Awesome. Did that make sense, the door and how to update your availability?
Yes, I was trying to unmute this. Could you go over it again?
Sure. So I'll show you again. So when you ignore all this fast scrolling. So you'll log into Volunteer Connection and you'll come to your home page. So you'll see your home page here. At the top, you'll click on where it says My Profile. You give it a second to load. And then on the left-hand side, you'll see a bunch of tabs. So you'll click on the one that says Disaster Cycle Services at the bottom. And what you'll do is you'll see an option that says Disaster Responder Availability. You'll click Edit. And then in there, you'll put in a date range. So again, you might say like, I'm able to deploy right now until, you know, August 7th. And you're pretty much saying like, that's the time I can deploy between that time, with the understanding that if you deploy between now and August 7th, it'll be for a minimum of 2 weeks. So you'll put in that date range. And after you put in that date range, you'll actually get a couple of options at the bottom. So your options are deploy within the region, deploy within the state, deploy within the division. So the division for us is the North Central Division. So that includes Wisconsin, Michigan, Ohio, Illinois. Does it include Minnesota? Jamie?
I can't remember off the top of my head. I thought it was Iowa, but I guess maybe Iowa wasn't a part of our division.
It might be. So the division includes a bunch of states, obviously, and the national means you're willing to deploy anywhere within the US. And then final option is virtual. So pretty much saying like, I can't go out in person, but I can support the shelter team virtually, or I can do certain activities working within Microsoft Teams virtually. You'll need obviously stable internet connection, phone, and have a Red Cross email. And then after that, you'll click Save Changes. Does that make sense, Ted?
And Ted, you're still on mute.
Okay, I got it.
Cool. Jamie?
Okay, and also about the gaps though, I was curious upon if you're wanting to deploy only in certain positions that you are qualified for. You can set up to where if you want feeding to be your primary or logistics, to be transportation, you can go in and set those up to say which ones you want. They usually look at the first two that you set as your primary and secondary that you'd like to deploy in. So if you feel that you're getting passed over, you might want to talk to one of the deployment officers and say, hey, is there anything on the door for deployments? And what are they looking for? You may have to change what you're wanting to do. A lot of times they're just looking for shelter workers. And some people love sheltering, some people hate sheltering. It's one or the other. But they maybe only be looking for that, but you may have that as your third option. Well, it only gives you primary, secondary. You may not be getting called because you don't have that set up there. They're looking for people that are primary or secondary preference of what they want to go out and deploy as. Does that make sense, guys?
Yes, it does for me.
Okay.
And if anyone has any questions or concerns afterwards, you can give me or Jamie a call. Anthony?
Okay, I have a quick question here. Looking at the classes, the slide that you have up there right now. Okay, I noticed that the ConOps 3.0. Now on my gap information that I have printed up, it says virtual instructor led. How do I go about to make sure that I set that up correctly in my so I can access that particular that course when it becomes time.
So
Any
I can
instructor, yeah. Go ahead.
Jamie, do you want to take that? Sorry.
That's okay. Any most classes you take are going to say WBT, which is web-based training. You can
Right.
take on Edge, but the ILT is the instructor-led training. Those are going to have to be an event that you would particularly go to, special training in person, and or they may have some online events that you can sign up with, like if you're from Quad City. Tess Shield. Have you ever spoken with Tess?
A couple of times, yeah.
Okay. Tess keeps an eye on nationally available training. So if you're looking to get a class that's only instructor led, she may be able to get you a virtual class throughout the United States, and or look to see when we're going to do another institute or some mini trainings for you to be able to get that class. So that's just sometimes a little bit more patient, but since COVID and we went all virtual, we have a little bit more opportunity
Okay, so
to get.
So basically, any of the instructor-led ones that may be coming up, because a couple on my activity position thing, it says virtual instructor-led training.
Okay, yeah, that is a possibility now too. It may not be offered within the region, but you can take it virtually. You have to sign up for that class, register, and you have to attend that class to get that credit.
and that's on the volunteer connection where I sign up, right?
Tess Sheil will be able to answer that better. She's gone above and beyond getting people training that they've been trying to get for years. So with COVID, all of a sudden we had more access virtually to get these classes that weren't available. Like
Okay.
the kitchen site, yeah, like a good example, like the kitchen site management class was
Which is
never available within the region. And I went to Nebraska and took that class.
And the funny
Several
thing
years
is the kitchen site simulation, and I believe the site management one are two that I'm actually waiting on for actually both either it's ILT and virtual according to my gap chart.
Yeah, you have to actually physically go and do the simulation. That's where they're going to show you the kitchen. Usually, when I took my class, somebody from the Southern Baptist showed up, and they
Right.
had one of brought a couple trailers and had the items in there so we could look at the kitchen. And the simulation is like, hey, we're opening up a feeding operation. You're partnering with the Southern Baptist. You know, where are we parking everything? Where's the shower house going to go? Where's the dumpsters going to go? Where's the earth line going to come through to pick up those Cambros? Where's
Right.
going to be the washing station? That's with the simulation, and that is something you have to do in person.
Okay. Now is that a possible? Is that because I actually I don't drive. My mom and dad do. Okay, but here's the problem. Okay, I'm in Geneseo here. Okay, is there a place that I can do that simulation stuff? Is there a place I can do that in like the Red Cross building in Moline? Like, is there a closer facility for driving distance?
Well, it is not offered in Moline. That would be something that you would have to travel to get, unless National comes out another way that you do not have to do it in person, to do virtual. But
Okay.
as I know it right now, I went to Nebraska to take that class. So
Okay.
sorry, we can't have every class ready available. It's usually based upon the need. And there was several of us that went, there was 4 or 5 of us that went from the region. So that was more of a, we had so many people interested, so they grabbed people from all around the division, or not the division, within surrounding states, and it was a special invite. But like I said, Tess Shield keeps an eye on that kind of stuff. And the Red Cross does, cover your hotel cost and transportation. So if your parents were able, I don't know if they're Red Crossers too, to be able to use the Red Cross vehicle to take you to that event. So that can be arranged. Does that answer your question, Anthony?
Yes, I pretty much that sums it up.
Okay. Yeah, I wish everything was ready available, but unfortunately, there has to be a large need for it.
Jamie, could you just go over, this is our last slide, just the trainings that are required if you are interested in becoming a supervisor. You need to get some deployments, and then some common things to keep in mind if you're about to be deployed.
Well, first and foremost, you are promoted to be a supervisor. Yes, the classes are important, but the experience is more important as an SA, as supporting a supervisor. And actually, sometimes you get deployed as an SA and you become a supervisor, even though you are not qualified. There's not somebody qualified, or you are showing those skill sets that they're like, hey, can you lead this? And you do it. You need to get that evaluation that shows promoted or promote to supervisor. If you get that, that will help qualify you. Does not guarantee that you will be an actual supervisor. So you have to have that evaluation to become an actual supervisor in the Red Cross. And when it comes down to deploying, the Red Cross has a document on the exchange, you've got one that's called the Disaster Responder Training Guide. That shows you all of the classes for any of the qualifications to become GAP to go out for deployments. And that is the big thing for if you want to deploy. Locally, you can pretty much do about anything besides drive a forklift or drive an ERV. You can do any and try out all the different things, but on a larger scale, you have to be qualified to be sent out in that specific position. Now, there's also another document like the packing list. People are always concerned, like, what do I take? You know, each disaster is different. You're not going to get all those questions answered, but you can always call one of your mentors. You can always call me or Hank. I've done several deployments in feeding, East Coast and West Coast, and I already have some packing lists. I don't personally have them on me. They're at the chapter, but I can share that information with you, what to pack to keep you prepared and that you're not taking 2 suitcases of stuff you do not need. Because some of the suggestions on the document that I found, it's called the Disaster Responder Information Guide. It tells you to pack a Sleek Me bag and pack, you know, rubber boots and this and that. I mean, this is all based upon preference and how much stuff you want to take. You're not taking your whole house. You're leaving for 2 weeks, and there's a lot of things you can live without, and or if not, go to Walmart and buy. So any information when you do deploy to, when you actually get out there, and you see things just don't seem right and you're just not having a good time, call home. Call one of us, especially if you're going out and feeding, and say, hey, I don't think this is right. Well, we don't know the whole circumstances, and the Red Cross gets into these gray areas of like, you know, we're supposed to be wearing masks, but we're not wearing them. Call home, figure out what's going on, talk with your supervisor. Maybe your supervisor is not as friendly and says, you know what, that's just the way we're going to do it. And you're like, I don't feel comfortable with this. Call home, get a sense of, you know, why this is going on, and let's make this a better deployment for you. So we are always available to help support you, even when you're not here within the region.
Thanks, Jamie. So first of all, thank you everyone for being here. Please keep this on your calendar. Next month, next third Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m. we'll be doing this again. This is how you can communicate with us. So please reach out to us when you want. Do it frequently. And the big thing is, again, often I think feeding feels like it has to play, you know, feels like it's playing second fiddle to sheltering, but it's an essential activity. I cannot, and Jamie cannot encourage you all enough to think about deploying, get your trainings done, and talk with us, either here locally or throughout the nation.
Definitely going out as an SA and feeding, you learn a lot, and you go on several different ones. Every single one is unique, and they are wonderful experiences. They're frustrating. You have to be very patient because you may be sitting around. You bring a book, you bring a game on your phone, you do something, you meet new friends, but you are out there for a reason, and everything takes time. It takes time to get resources. It takes time to get things planned. It takes time to get supervisors deployed. I mean, there's a lot of things we don't know that are going on. And yes, everybody gets mad at headquarters, but there is a plan, and you just have to be patient. And when you start doing that work and working with those clients, driving an ERV, going out there and handing those meals out, or if you're at a fixed location or you're working on a mark and you're handing out food, it is wonderful to work with the clients. That's why you signed up, and it is self-rewarding. So I encourage everyone to try it.
Yeah, with that, I'm going to stop recording.